Anybody remember? Joe, can you, yep, the Big Bang, yep, not the age of the Earth, the Big Bang. Can you shut those doors, Joe? Thank you. Okay, so we looked at some things, that really, what is the Big Bang, really, when you look at it? What? A miracle, yep, a miracle, okay? A miracle, because why? We broke natural laws. You can't have, matter cannot come out of nothing, okay? We know that, right? Matter cannot be created or destroyed. That is a law. A law is unchanging. A miracle breaks a natural law. So to have material out of nowhere, okay, I have not heard any, I don't know if anybody's heard a definition of where matter came from. They can't tell you, okay? They'll say, well, all the matter in the universe, constricted into a cosmic egg, they call it. Okay, I don't know. And it's kind of funny to me, but they ask where the cosmic chicken is. But okay, where did that matter come from? All the stars, think of billions of stars in the universe, and just all that matter that we have, they can't tell you where it came from. So that is a miracle. So don't let them get you had science versus religion, and I can't believe in miracles. Well, that's the biggest miracle of all, is that matter created itself. Okay, and time created itself. You say, okay, well, the other argument is, where did God come from? Okay, they're always, I have a video explains it better than I do, but there has to be an immaterial, all-powerful being outside of time and space to create time and matter. Okay, and that sounds like God to me. Okay, so there had to be a first cause, and either the first cause is nothing and it just somehow magically appeared, well, the first cause is God, who always existed outside of time and matter, okay? And that's really your two options. So the Big Bang, and they will say it, it's the greatest miracle, okay? That is a miracle, no matter if it's God created it or it came out of nothing, okay? That's breaking any natural law that we have. We kind of looked at the explosion. How does the explosion create order? Okay, we look at the order, the universe, the way they rotate, the earth, it's all has order. Okay, there's order. A big explosion, if you've ever blown something off, who's ever created a big explosion? Nobody? Fireworks? I was with somebody, a day, I won't name names, but they were, had fireworks, and they had one, they put it in the ground, and then we're watching it, and all of a sudden the firework tips over, is laying there, and we're like, it's pointed at somebody, and we're all like, do we run, or do we go put it back up? And I think we ran out, put it back up real quick before it exploded, and that's probably why fireworks are illegal in New York State. Yeah, and it created a big explosion. But no order comes from that. If you're throwing a hand grenade, if you're throwing an explosion, okay, there's shrapnel, little pieces, there's no order. Round balls do not appear and perfectly formed and rotating in the universe. Okay, that does not happen from an explosion. Okay, we talked about the fine-tuning of the world, of the earth and the universe. Okay, you look at the distance. If the earth has to be exactly the perfect distance from the sun, if it's too close, think about it. They say, oh, global warming, we're all going to die if it's a degree off. Or we're all going to freeze to death if it's, I think in the 70s, we were all going to die because of global cooling. Okay, now we're going to die because of global warming. So you think of how perfect, I don't believe it's that much of a difference if it's a degree different, but see what they're saying it's a degree off, so it has to be the perfect distance from the sun. The moon has to be the perfect distance from the earth. That gives us our tides, all sorts of problems if it's too close or too far away. If we're too close or too far away from the earth, we have to be spinning at the right speed. Okay, we have a tilt in the axis that gives us our seasons, and just all there's they said in that one video, there's 200 things that a planet needs to support life. Okay, they thought it was one or two, all right, but you also need, I think Jupiter it is, the planet that sucks in all that's like a giant vacuum cleaner. Otherwise, we'd be hit constantly with, I'm going to get it right, is it meteorites? Meteors. It's the one that hits the Earth, meteors? One when they're in space, it's one. When they hit the Earth, it's another. Okay, either way, that sucks them all in, the gravitation. Everything has to be perfect. And I think they said if you stretched a tape measure across the universe and you were 1 inch off, then we wouldn't have life. And that's how perfect it has to be. They say there's billions of planets and there's billions of opportunities. They don't know that. They're guessing. That's what you have to realize. A lot of things, they're guessing, okay? They can only see a few planets, and they think, well, if there's a planet with every star and there's billions of stars, therefore there's billions of planets. That's their, because you can't see the planets. Okay, so there's just an amazing, intricate fine-tuning that has to go on. We have to have the right level of oxygen. If we have too little, we can't breathe. If we have too much, then it's going to, affect rust and fires, okay? Carbon dioxide has to be perfect for plant growth. All these things, gravity, all right? You've seen them on the moon when there's not enough gravity. What happens? Rain wouldn't fall, no tides, okay? Can you imagine? All these things have to be perfect. The size of the earth has to be perfect. If we traveled much faster, the centrifugal force would drive us away from the sun. Much slower, we'd be drawn toward it. Okay, all these factors that have to line up perfectly for there to be life. Okay, I didn't even get into all of them, but really realize that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. That's just for the planet to exist. If you watch the video, it's talking about all the forces had to form, the laws, the gravitational, the strong, weak forces all had to be perfect. They're all calculated. They had to, from the moment. Otherwise, the universe would have either expanded too greatly, quickly, or it would have imploded on itself. So all this stuff had to happen before we could even get Earth. Okay, before we could even get something to start with. Then we looked at the mathematical probability of amino acid forming, 100 of them lining up to be a protein, and all thousands of proteins just to be a bacteria, the most basic forms. And it's getting mathematically extremely impossible for life to happen on itself. We're going to look at the age of the earth, okay? The one is, we're looking at they tell us it's 4.5 billion years old, okay? And we're going to look at that. So one of the things we realize is that the sun is aging, okay? It's not a constant. It gives off energy. It loses that energy, okay? You have a fire. You're going to burn the wood. It's going to die, okay? You're burning up the fuel at 4 million tons per second. Isn't that amazing? 4 million tons it's burning off, giving up energy per second. Physics Today reported in 1979, by analyzing data from Greenwich Observatory in the period 1836 to 1953, John A. Eddy, Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics and High Altitude Observatory in Boulder, Colorado, and Aram A. Berzenzinen, a mathematician with S. Ross and Co. in Boston, have found evidence that the sun has been contracting about 0.1% per century during that time, corresponding to the shrinkage rate of about 5 feet per hour. And digging deep into historical records, Eddy has found 400-year-old eclipse observations that are consistent with such a shrinkage. So what is the natural problem? It doesn't sound like much, but if we're talking what? 4.5 billion years. Okay, think of how big the sun would have been 4.5 billion years ago. These are stunning numbers. For extrapolation, it meant that 100,000 years ago, the sun would have been twice its size, making life basically untenable. Okay, that's just 100,000 years ago. We're not talking millions, we're not talking billions. Okay, it's obvious, I did look it up, they'll argue, it's, his data wasn't right, or it's not correct, or it's not doing that much, but it's just common sense that it's shrinking due to giving up energy. I mean, we know that. Anything that's giving off, it's using up that energy source, and eventually it's going to run out. I read one, and they're like, well, meteorites go into it, and that fuels it, and it's getting bigger. I'm like, really? That didn't, that strained my credibility. And 100 million years ago, when dinosaurs were supposedly roaming about the sun's perimeter, would have extended well beyond where Earth is. Okay, that'd be kind of toasty, wouldn't it, if the sun was touching the earth? Eddy later reduced his estimates of shrinkage from 5 to 2 feet per hour. That's still far too much for evolution. Okay, well, give me 1 foot, 2 feet. It's just not plausible. This disclosure alone, if correct, shoots down both the alleged age of our planet and Darwin's theory. evolutionists realized that the sun's shrinkage must be temporary, cyclical, or peripheral, that the observations were erroneous. Okay, so they're saying, well, it could shrink, but then it could get bigger, and then, it could be temporary, or, maybe it's not always been doing that the whole time. But it's kind of obvious, even if you read anything. I just read a thing online just to check, and they said that's where they got the 400 tons per second. So it's using up energy. It's shrinking. It's going to run out. Okay, it can't last forever. Okay. So that's the sun. The moon. The moon's recession from Earth also poses a time difficulty for evolution. As Dr. Jonathan Sarfati notes, the moon is slowly receding from Earth at about 4 centimeters, 1.5 inches per year, and the rate would have been greater in the past. The moon could never have been closer than 18,400 kilometers, known as the Roche limit, because Earth's tidal forces, the result of different gravitational forces on different parts of the moon, would have shattered it. But even if the moon had started receding from being in contact with the Earth, it would have taken only 1.37 billion years to reach its present distance. So they're saying it's 4 point. So at the closest, if it went from that point out, it's only, they're saying 1.3, and they're saying it's 4.5 billion years old. Okay? So we have comets. Comets were presumably formed at the same time as the solar system, but they disintegrate considerably as they orbit near the sun, as evidenced by their long tails, some of which extend up to 100 million miles. That blows my mind. I don't know who's measuring that, 100 million miles. Everyone remember Halley's Comet, the big I remember that was a big deal. Halley's Comet was coming around. Some comets have been observed breaking apart. How could they last for 5 billion years? If they all started at the same time, how could they be, orbiting for 5 billion years? Astronomer Fred Hoyle wrote, "It is an immediate inference that these comets cannot have been moving around the sun as they are at present for much longer than 1 million years, since otherwise they would have already broken up." They're saying they couldn't have lasted 1 million years, and you're telling me that they've been going around for 4.5 billion years. In 1950, to resolve the problem, Dutch astronomer Jan Oort proposed that there exists a faraway cloud containing billions of comets. They supposedly lie dormant in this storehouse until some cosmological event dislodges one, sending it into our solar system. Okay, sounds good. In the 1998 World Book Encyclopedia, matter-of-factly states, long-period comets arrive from the Oort cloud, a collection of comets 1,000 times further away than Pluto's orbit, not telling the readers that the Oort cloud is a speculation that no one has ever seen. So it doesn't fit our theory. Let's just make up something. Do we have any evidence for it? No. Okay, in order to combat the evidence is against our theory. Let's make up evidence, and then World Book Encyclopedia just states it as a fact. Okay? Look it up, and you will see. I looked it up. This is the first thing that I go, is the Oort cloud real? They say, no real hard evidence. Okay? This is science, okay? I just want you to understand what they're doing. It's evolution science. There's people pushing it needs to be made a law, and we can't have anything else. And trust us, we're scientists. They're making stuff up and then just telling us, believe it. Okay, this is what it says if you looked it up. The first thing I saw on the internet says there's no real hard evidence that the Oort cloud exists. It is a pure theory created to explain where long-distance comets come from. The comets will not be close together, so we can't see them in numbers banded together. We have no evidence, shred of evidence. We just have a hole in our theory, so we're going to make up evidence, and then everybody's going to go along with it and print it in the encyclopedias as fact. They also have another thing that short-period comets, those that take less than 200 years to orbit the sun, are now said to originate from the Kuiper belt, whose existence has also been debated. Okay, do you get what's going on? This is not science. Science is where you observe something, you have a theory, you can test it, you can reproduce it, it becomes a law, it's proven science. When you're just making up junk, it's not science. You're making up stuff, okay? So meteorites. By comparing the number of meteorites in the Earth to the rate at which they fall, we should be able to roughly estimate our planet's age. Meteorite scarcity suggests that the Earth is only a few thousand years old. They are mostly found in very recent uppermost terrain. If the geologic layers slowly formed over millions of years, as evolutionists say, they should be full of meteorites. So if we've been around for millions and billions, we should find all this evidence for meteorites. F.A. Penneth noted in Vistas in Astronomy, the quantity of coal mined during the last century amounted to many billions of tons, and with it about 1,000 meteorites should have been dug out. If during the time the coal deposits were formed, the meteorite frequency had been the same as it is today, equally complete as the absence of meteorites in any other geologically old material that has been excavated in the course of technical operations. Okay, do you see the problem here? We should see, we've been going for billions of years, we have meteorites, they're rare, but we should see thousands of them, we should be digging them up. I mean, we're digging tons of coal up, okay, and we don't find them. Back in 1932, W.A. Tarr of the University of Missouri wrote in Science, "For many years I have searched for meteorites or meteoric material in sedimentary rocks, which is what the geologic column chiefly consists of. I have interviewed the late Dr. G.P. Merrill of the U.S. National Museum and Dr. G.T. Pryor of the British Natural History Museum, both well-known students of meteorites, and neither man knew of a single occurrence of a meteorite in sedimentary rock. The letters petitioned for any information indicating that meteorites do occur in these sediments. The petition went unanswered. Few meteorites have been found below the highest levels of the geologic column." Okay, so apparently, all the dinosaurs were wiped out because of a meteorite, but we can't find any evidence of meteorites anywhere. So if a big one, big enough to kill all the dinosaurs, got through, where are all the other ones that supposedly over millions of years should have landed on Earth? The petition went unanswered. Few meteorites have been found. I just read that. Okay, so we don't see any evidence. The evidence, if your theory, this is what should happen with your theory, we don't see any evidence to support it. Another one is gas. Helium leaks through the Earth's crust at a measurable rate and enters the atmosphere, at which it comprises only a minute fraction, 5 parts per million. Some helium also escapes into outer space, but it must overcome gravity's pull and cannot escape as quickly as it enters. Okay, do you see the problem? And more is coming in, some's escaping, so it should be building up. If we're millions and billions of years old, we should have all this measurable helium in the atmosphere. And the problem, there should be a lot more if Earth is billions of years old. The dilemma prompted an article in Nature entitled, "Where is the Earth Radiogenic Helium?" Okay, so this isn't just somebody making up problems. The evolutionists realize it's a problem and they're trying to address it. The latter noted, "At first sight, there ought to be about 1,000 times as much helium in the atmosphere as there is." After reviewing shortcomings in one proposed explanation, the article uneasily concluded. This is all they got to answer this. They realize there's an issue, that the evidence doesn't fit their theory, but we're going to twist it and make it fit our theory. Do you get the pattern here? Whether it's fossils, whether it's all these problems with it, we'll just make up something, and all this could have happened. And nobody can disprove it, but you're just making up. They don't have evidence for it. The only way we can explain this state of affairs, according to Dr. Ferguson, an atmospheric specialist, is to suppose that the atmosphere was somehow depleted of its helium a few million years and has been building up its concentration since. What form of catastrophic event might have taken, he does not say. One possibility could be that it was a collision with a comet. Okay, do you get that? We have basically saying we have no idea. We're just going to make something up. Something could have happened, and then it released, and then it stopped releasing, and then it went back to normal. We don't have any evidence of everything. We just think that could have happened. Okay, do you see how it's not science. I keep saying it's not science. Dr. Larry Vardaman, chairman of the physics department at the Institute of Creation Research, doesn't buy evolution, therefore has no need to conjure up rationalizations. His technical book, The Age of the Earth's Atmosphere, a study of the helium flux through the atmosphere, anybody read that? I'm sure it's on the top of your reading list there, makes a strong case that helium accumulation limits the Earth's age to about 10,000 years. Okay, based on what we have, and that fits. I remember I took my wife when we went back to Australia, and we were Kansas, where the people go diving, and we go off to the reef and that, and we were walking along the beach there, and they had a big sign talking about the reef. You remember that? Remember what it said? How old did they say the coral reef is? I think it was 6,000 to 10,000 years. I don't know how they date it. They believe it's 6,000 to 10,000 years old, and they said, we have no idea why all the diversity and all the bright colors, and it doesn't make sense, basically what they're saying. And I'm like, I could answer both of those in one answer here. I have the answers, but that's another thing. They can't figure out why fish and animals below the level where you can see why they're all brightly colored. There's no reason for evolution when it's pitch black down there. Nothing can see. Why do they have all this beauty and colors? It doesn't make sense why they evolved it when they can't be seen. But God, we know God created it for a purpose. It's beautiful. Has anybody been scuba diving? You weren't scuba diving. Snorkeling. You were snorkeling. Okay. It is unbelievable, the reef and the colors and the beauty down there. It is just like amazing when you go there. But the Earth's rate of rotation is slowly but measurably declining. Based on this, Lord Kelvin, the 19th century physicist who introduced the Kelvin temperature scale, argued against an old planet. Okay, we all know what Lord Kelvin, I mean, these aren't just, this is, obviously was made a Lord. Okay, we got the Kelvin temperature scale from him. There's a bunch of other things he did. Great scientist. But his point was if Earth were billions of years old, its centrifugal force would have been so great during its alleged molten state, and the equatorial regions would have bulged out. This would give our planet a different shape, since it would have retained much of the bulging as it cooled and consolidated. Because the decline in rotational rate is now known to be greater than previously thought, Lord Kelvin's argument holds up even better. Okay, so the Earth's spinning, they realize it's slowing down. Okay, and so he said if you extrapolate backwards, okay, it would have caused issues, and then later on we find out it's going even faster than what we thought or what he knew. Okay, so it would have caused problems when you go backwards. Drawing conclusions. The Earth is a giant magnet. That's why compasses work. In 1967, the U.S. Commerce Department published a detailed scientific study of the magnetic field, showing its intensity had decreased by 7% since first being measured in 1829. See the problem here? Okay, is it getting stronger? It's getting weaker. And this is just from 1829 to 1967. They're able to calculate it. Okay, the report predicted that if decay continued at the same rate, Earth's magnetic field would vanish by the year 3,991. Okay, so they see it's declining if we keep going. Science News said of the field in 1980, measurements of the main field when plugged into a computer model showed the overall intensity of the field is declining at a rate of 26 nanoteslas per year. That's many Tesla cars per year. If the rate of decline were to continue steadily, and researcher Gilbert Mead stressed that researchers cannot determine if it will, the field strength would reach 0 in 1,200 years. Okay, see the Earth's winding down, okay? And God, the clockmaker, wound it up, okay, the sun, and it's winding down. Scientific America reported in 1989, in the next 2 millennia, if the present rate of decay is sustained, the dipole component of the field should reach 0. So they all say it's going to go down. Okay, they all agree that it's losing its strength. It's going to go down. Okay, so what if we go backwards? This also means that the field was previously stronger. If the planet is billions of years old, the magnetic field would have been impossibly high in ages past, making life unsustainable. Okay, so the Earth is slowing down. Its magnetic field is decreasing. So if we went back billions of years, we couldn't have had life. Evolutionists point to archaeomagnetic data, that's measurements of magnetization in ancient artifacts, that indicate the field's intensity has fluctuated in the past. But Dr. Russell Humphreys, a physicist at Sandia National Laboratories, has proposed a model that shows how even taking such fluctuations into account, the magnetic field may limit the Earth's age to roughly 10,000 years. So it may not be 100% consistent all the time. It may be higher, lower fluctuations, but it is going down. The calculations, 10,000 years. Another one is the Mississippi River is said to have formed about 2 million years ago. However, at a glance at a map of the USA shows the river created a huge delta jutting out of the Gulf of Mexico. The 19th century A. Humphreys and H. L. Abbott of the U.S. Army Corps of Topographical Engineers extensively studied the river and delta. They determined the latter's age by dividing its annual growth into the distance from the continental shoreline. Their conclusion? Adopting this rate of progress, 263 feet per annum per year, 4,400 years have elapsed since the river began to advance into the Gulf. Okay, you see how they just, 2 million years, they slap a date on there when they actually, this is the U.S. Army, okay, this is the government goes in and says, it's not 2 million years, it's only 4,400 years old. Another obstacle is people, okay? One of the greatest obstacles in Darwin's Age of the Earth is man himself. Supposedly we've been evolving for millions of years, right? Okay, so think about that. In recent decades, dark warnings have been about the overpopulation. You've heard a bunch about that. One of the idea's greatest proponents was Paul Ehrlich, the author of The Great Population Bomb. So you've heard all these, the end of the world, we're going to overpopulate. I don't know if anybody's seen the memes with Thanos. Has anybody seen that? Okay, I don't know. He's the bad guy in Marvel, and he snapped his fingers. Why? What was the reason? Overpopulation, okay? There's too many people, okay? He's really an environmentalist. I was reading memes, and they're like, why didn't he just double the resources? If he could have the people, why didn't he just double everything, the resources that we have? Obviously, he couldn't do that. But I saw a meme, and it had all these headlines about how environmentalists actually, headlines say, we need to decrease the population by half. There was like 3 of them. Environmentalists are saying this, we got too many people. We're going to run out of resources. We need to cut the population by half. Okay, that's really Thanos, the most evil guy in the world, said, but environmentalists are saying that. Okay, and I was reading up on their thing. You know what their biggest thing is? How to stop population, too much population? Women's reproductive health. We have to go around the world and teach people how to abort their babies, and that will save the planet. Okay, and I'm kind of, can I say that environmentalism is a religion? Okay, it is a religion. People are worshiping it. They think they're doing good. Now killing your baby is saving the planet. You're really stopping the population. Okay, and that's really, they're just going to grow up and pollute the planet. I got to save the planet. I don't want to have kids. And they're going around to these countries claiming, telling them contraceptives and abortion is the answer. And I mean, can I say that, I'm getting off track here, but communism and environmentalism really went, Judeo-Christian values the person, okay? What does those other things? Communism is the community, is the important good. So we can kill millions of people for the good of the community. We can kill people, it's good for the planet, This is the religion. I kind of think of the Aztecs offering up sacrifices to their gods, the God's going to bless them. And I'm thinking, we're doing the same thing. We're offering up unborn babies, to save the planet, and I'm like, it's sad. Anyway, I'm getting off track here. But that's the big fear. We're going to overpopulate the earth. There was another guy named Malthus, and he had an essay about how everything's going to happen, famine and all these terrible things are going to happen. But this is a refutation of it. Global population is now 7 times where it was when Malthus wrote his essay. And yet in the last 30 years alone, we have cut extreme poverty in half. Fewer people are dying today of starvation than ever. Per capita income is higher. Child labor is down. It turns out the main problem was never that the world was overpopulated, but that its people were never free enough to create wealth, and when they did create something valuable, they weren't allowed to keep it. Okay, this is a side note, but this is the whole big thing, as they're talking about. We've got to, all those proponents of, we got to do something to cut the population aren't volunteering to, take themselves out, if they think that would help the planet, but they want everybody else to do something, but they're not volunteering. But if the famines Ehrlich predicted didn't materialize, but world population has undeniably been growing. From 1 billion in 1800 to 2 billion in 1930 to some 7.9 billion today. Evolution, the problem is what happens if we go backwards, right? Okay. Evolution's dilemma comes from looking further back and doing some math. Creation scientist Henry Morris noted over 20 years ago the average family size today worldwide is about 3.6 children. and the annual population growth is 2%. Assume an initial population of 2 people, the first parents. The evolution model, with its million-year history of man, has to be strained to the breaking point. It is essentially incredible that there could have been 25,000 generations of men with a resulting population of only 3.5 billion. 25,000 generations. If the population had only 0.5%, so today it's 2%, we only went to 0.5% per year for 1 million years, or if the average family size were 2.5 children per family, okay, so we're lowering, and if you notice what's happening in America and these developing countries, we're actually below the reproduction rate, okay? Why is that? Because in the past, you had to have a lot of kids because they were your retirement plan, right? Okay, they were going to take care of you. You didn't have Social Security. When you took care of these kids, raised them, and then when you were older, they could take care of you. Okay, that's why they had large families. Okay, too good you're looking at his boys. Yeah, so that's what they had to do. So now we have Social Security. The government's going to take care of us. We don't need a lot of kids, so it's a lot of work, and we want our careers. So actually, Europe and America, I think, we're losing people, but we're obviously getting a couple 100,000 a month with immigration, but that's not a good thing. Okay. In China, they went to 1 child, and then they're having all these problems because they got an elderly population and nobody to take care of them. Okay, they're not getting the money in, and nobody can take care of them because the 1 child. They've actually reversed that because it created so many issues. So 2.5 children, which is less than now, probably was greater in the past. But if we took 2.5, 0.5% growth rate, the number of people in the present generation would exceed 10 to the power of 2,100. Okay, think about that. 2,000. Even if you went down to, that 2.5 children is just enough. You get what I'm saying. If you had 1 child per couple, you'd be losing population. So it's just enough to increase the population at a very slower growth rate than what we're seeing. We'd have 10 to the power, a million is to the power of 6, billion is to the power of 9. I mean, just think of that. The numbers, 2,100. A number of which is, of course, utterly impossible. Only 10 to the power of 130 electrons couldn't be crammed in the entire known universe. Electrons, okay? I'm going to go like this because they're way smaller. We can't, 10 to the 1 power 130 electrons in the whole universe, which goes for light years. And we're supposedly would have had 10 to the power of 2,100 people with the population if we've been evolving if we've had humans for 1 million years or 100 million. Okay, so that just doesn't make sense. Since we have been proliferating faster in recent years due to improved health care and nutrition, Morris did not use today's rates to estimate ancient population growth. Morris did not use today's rates to estimate ancient population growth. He pointed out the world population was roughly 600 million in AD, I missed the date, and 1 billion in 1800. This translates to an annual growth rate of 0.33%. Okay, so it's even lower than we can calculate it before the Industrial Revolution and all the advances in science, assuming that as a norm we would get the current population of 6,300 years if we started with just 2 people. Okay, so which you have to look at, what does the evidence fit, which theory? The Bible, of course, reports a great flood which left 8 people in its wake, and theologians debate the flood's precise date. But if we take well-known one fixed by Archbishop James Ussher, it's 2350 BC, we would get today's population from an annual growth rate of 0.5%. Okay, you see which one fits better? Okay, can't take it from Adam because we had a worldwide flood, so we take it from the flood. We had to know how many people were there, extrapolate the growth rate. Which does it fit? 0.5% fits exactly with what we have. These calculations are simple and hypothetical. In reality, of course, 8 people cannot increase by just 0.5%. Initial reproduction rates would have necessarily been much higher to account for the large civilization that existed in ancient times. If you have 4 kids and you doubled the, it would change, but the biblical model adjusts to fall within mathematical reality far more easily than the long Darwinian one. So we're looking at which theory fits the best. It's creationism. Okay, we can't be evolving for 1 million years, have 25,000 generations, and have the population we have now. The other thing is evolution's counter that the population must have waxed and waned over the eons, held in check by plagues, famines, and warfare. But these have troubled man throughout recorded history and have not stopped world population from growing. Okay, we've had all these things throughout history, the Great Plague. Okay, we've had all these things, but population has still been growing. In fact, wars have been far more deadly in modern times due to advances in weaponry. If people have been evolving for as long as Darwinists say, where did the bones go from these billions of bodies? Okay, so if we have billions of people, maybe they're saying, well, they may have died out with war. Okay, actually, it's the past century. You look at the deaths in World War I and World War II, and it's just astronomical. They didn't have machine guns. They didn't have mass killing, bombing they did in World War II. I mean, just the casualties, the Holocaust, 6 million. Communism, how many has that killed in the past 100 years? We have just become very efficient at killing. It just blows. What is it, Mrs. Oliveri? How many have died? I mean, I think it's around 100 million. I forgot to look it up. Communism, easy 100 million. I know the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, 8 million. China, not only he killed them, but his policies. I mean, millions and millions have died in the last century. Stalin, I think 36, I can't even, it's hard to put a number to. I think Stalin's 30 million, China, I mean, millions. We can't even just, they say one murder is a tragedy, millions is just a statistic, okay? It just doesn't even compute. I was listening to a podcast, they were talking about it, and Stalin would go and say, I want this percentage of the population of this town wiped out, find people that are against the state. They would go and kill extra to prove how loyal they were. So they'd go in and wipe out 50% of a town just to, prove how loyal they are to Stalin and the government. I mean, just mass murder on an epic scale that we've never seen in history, and still what? The population has increased, okay? It's gone up, so it doesn't make sense that we're at where if we've been evolving and had humans for 1 million years, we shouldn't be at this population level. And think about that. If 1 million years and billions of bodies and they struggle to find, you got to get a pig's tooth, and call that a man. There should be these skeletons everywhere just over the sheer amount of time. One clue to how long we've been around is history itself. Writing is believed to date back to 5,500 years. Before then, man was considered prehistoric, but perhaps there's no record of those times because they never were. Okay, well, we can't find writing. They just couldn't write. But think about it. Man supposedly evolved for millions of years, finally reaching the point where he could write. The author says at 2, his son David knew the alphabet, which is not unusual. At 6, most kids can what? Read and write, okay? So how is it that 500,000 years ago, no adults were smart enough to devise a written language? Okay, if a 6-year-old is smart enough to read and write, they're not going to develop a language, but you're telling me nobody could develop a language 50,000 years ago? Brain evolution sure must have happened suddenly. So just things, questions. Why is it all kind of line up with 10,000, 5,000, the flood? Why is it all line up with that and not evolution millions of years? Another thing is, as land undergoes erosion, sediment passes into the sea at a calculatable rate. If the oceans were billions of years old, there should be 100,000 feet of sediment blanketing the ocean floor. They can tell. They know how much is getting washed away. They figured us all out. Instead, there is less than 3,000 feet. Also, at the current pace of erosion, the continents would reduce to sea level in 14 million years. Further havoc for evolution. So you have all this erosion that's going on. It's happening. It's a constant. If we had millions of years, it would have washed away everything. How do evolutionists justify their estimate of billions of years? Their greatest argument is probably Darwinian theory itself. Chance and natural selection would require eons to develop life forms. Okay, that's the only, they have to go with it. They have to try to make it fit, because it's the only way we could have evolved is had so much time. And we're going to get into radiometric and carbon dating next week. Okay, that's another thing. But after one buys that argument, all evidence that doesn't fit is rejected. Okay, so this isn't an unbiased scientist, we're just following the evidence, just the facts, man, we're going to follow it wherever it leads. You already have a presupposed supposition that the earth is this. Anything we can get to fit it, we'll take, and anything that doesn't, we'll just make up a story to reject it. As British physicist H.S. Lisbon observed in Physics Bulletin, he said, "In fact, evolution became, in a sense, a scientific religion. Almost all scientists have accepted it, and many are prepared to bend their observations to fit in with it." Okay, you see this? It's tragic, okay? Anybody that questions this, anybody that has evidence, they're going to make them, they're going to destroy them, they're going to get rid of them. We'll watch a video at the end, just what they're doing in colleges. Anybody that believes differently, and they get them kicked out, and you can't teach, it's a religion, okay? It really is, and that's what it is, and many are prepared to bend their observations to fit in with it, okay? Instead of saying, well, the evidence points to this, it's like, no, we'll just make up a story, that could have happened. We have no evidence to, refute the evidence, and that's really a sad thing that they're doing. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we love you, dear Lord. We just thank you for creating us and all that you do for us, and you love us even though we don't deserve it. Thank you for how blessed we are. We love you, dear Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, you are dismissed.